Want a better look?" She smirked, turned around, and showed me a stuck zipper. I had been staring at my roommate in that emerald green dress for 5 full seconds without saying a single word. 5 seconds that changed everything. But tonight, 3 hours later, Nathan Caldwell leaned across a gala table and looked me dead in the eye. "She's using you," he said, smooth as poison. "Find some soft, simple guy, make herself look better. It's what she always does." He smiled like a man who had never once been wrong in his life. And for exactly 3 terrible seconds, I almost believed him. Subscribe to our channel and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. I am not the kind of man who stares. I want to be clear about that right from the beginning, because everything that happened, the gala, the lie, the kiss on the balcony, Nathan's face when Claire finally said what she had been holding back for 2 years, all of it traces back to one Saturday afternoon in our kitchen when I forgot that rule completely. My name is Ryan Parker. I am 27 years old. I design websites for a living, which means I spend most of my time alone in a room staring at a screen, making things look exactly the way other people want them to look. I am good at it. I am reliable. I show up. I deliver. I do not cause problems, and I absolutely do not complicate things. That was the version of myself I had carefully constructed by the time I moved into apartment 4C on Birchwood Avenue in Chicago. Claire Bennett moved in 11 days after me. She came with 3 suitcases, a box of mismatched coffee mugs she refused to throw away, and an energy that filled the apartment the moment she walked through the door. She was 25 years old, an assistant event planner at the Halston Grand Hotel, and the most effortlessly alive person I had ever shared a refrigerator with. We established rules immediately. I remember sitting at the kitchen table on her second night, both of us eating Thai food out of the containers because neither of us had unpacked plates yet, and she pulled out a legal pad, an actual legal pad, yellow with blue lines, and started writing things down. "Okay," she said, not looking up. "Rule 1. Dishes. I cook, you clean. I clean, you cook. We do not let things pile up." "Agreed," I said. "Rule 2. She tapped her pen against the paper. "No bringing people home without a 24-hour heads up. I need time to emotionally prepare." "For what?" "For the fact that someone is going to use my bathroom and touch my good towels." She looked up, then completely serious. "I have opinions about my towels, Ryan." I laughed. It surprised me, actually, how easily she made me laugh. "Okay, 24 hours. What else?" "Rule 3. She set the pen down. This one she delivered with a steadiness that felt different from the first 2. "We don't make this complicated." I looked at her. She looked at me. "We are roommates," she said. "That is a good thing to be. A complicated roommate situation is a nightmare, and I have been through one, and I am not doing it again. So whatever happens, we stay friends. We stay honest. We stay uncomplicated." "Agreed," I said again, and I meant it. I completely, absolutely 100% meant it. For approximately 6 weeks, it was genuinely uncomplicated. Then somewhere around week 7, I noticed that she always saved me the last dumpling. Every time we ordered from Golden Dragon, which was often because we were both terrible about cooking on weeknights, she would eat everything on her plate and leave one dumpling in the container. Without saying anything. Without making it a thing. Just left it there in the spot where I would find it when I came back to the kitchen for a second look. I did not mention it. She did not mention it. But I started leaving the hallway light on when she worked late, because she had told me once offhandedly while checking her phone at midnight that walking into a dark apartment after a long day felt like the loneliness was waiting for her inside. She said it like it was nothing. Like it was just a quirky feeling she had. She moved on to talking about her boss within 30 seconds. I left the light on every night after that. Neither of us mentioned that either. We built something between us that had no name and no rule book, and both of us were very, very careful not to examine it too closely. Because Claire had a goal, a promotion at the Halston Grand, that she had been working toward for 2 years, and I had a project, a contract with a mid-sized tech company that was bigger than anything I had landed before, and neither of us had time for something that didn't have a category. So I stayed Ryan Parker, the reliable roommate. And she stayed Claire Bennett, the ambitious, funny, occasionally wearing my hoodie roommate. And everything was fine. Until the Saturday afternoon in October, when she walked into the kitchen in an emerald green dress, and my brain stopped working entirely. I heard her before I saw her. The sound of heels on hardwood, which was unusual for a Saturday, unusual enough that I looked up from my laptop without even deciding to. She was standing in the kitchen doorway. I don't know how long I stared. Honestly, I have tried to reconstruct the timeline, and I cannot do it accurately because there was a gap, a genuine measurable gap between the moment she appeared and the moment any coherent thought formed in my head. The dress was emerald green. It hit just below the knee. It was the kind of dress that looked effortless in a way that probably took 45 minutes to achieve. And she was standing there with her dark hair up, and these small gold earrings catching the kitchen light, and she was looking at me with this expression that was half expectation and half something else I could not immediately name. "Well," she said. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. "Ryan." She tilted her head. "I asked you a question." I had not heard a question. I had heard her walk into the room, and then I had lost several seconds to something I was not prepared to analyze. "Sorry," I said. "Say it again." I said. She gestured at herself, one hand moving from her shoulder downward. "How does it look? I have the Halston's Autumn Donor preview tonight, and Margaret wants everyone looking, quote, reflective of the hotel's brand, unquote. And I bought this last week, and I have not worn it yet, and I want an honest opinion." An honest opinion. She wanted me to look at her and give her an honest opinion. "It looks good," I said. She stared at me. "That is genuinely the least helpful answer you could have given me," she said. "It looks—" I stopped. Started again. "You look good in it." Something shifted in her expression. A flicker of something she immediately covered with the smirk that I had catalogued somewhere in the back of my mind, as her default response when she was deciding how to handle something unexpected. "Do you want a better look?" she asked. My heart did something it had no business doing. "What?" I said. She turned around. For a moment, and I mean this, there was a moment I thought she was doing something deliberate. I thought this was Claire being Claire, poking at the line we had drawn, testing whether I would cross it or back away. She was fully capable of that. She had a wicked sense of the space between people, and she knew how to occupy it in ways that made you recalibrate your entire understanding of a conversation. Then I saw the zipper. It was stuck. About 3 inches below the top, the fabric had bunched and caught, and the zipper pull was going nowhere. "I tried for 10 minutes, she said, her voice shifting from teasing to practical in the way it did when she was actually frustrated. "I cannot get the angle right from behind. I need you to fix it so I can figure out if I even like how it closes before I commit to wearing it tonight." I stood up from the table. She stood very still as I walked toward her. This is the part I have revisited more times than I would like to admit, because it should have been simple. It was a stuck zipper. I had fixed things for Claire before: a leaking faucet, a frozen laptop, a shelf bracket that wouldn't stay in the wall. This was the same category of thing. A small domestic problem. A roommate favor. Except that I was standing 6 inches from her, and I could see where her hair had been pinned up, and a few small pieces had escaped along the back of her neck, and she smelled like something warm and familiar that I had been breathing in for 9 months without ever acknowledging what it did to me. I took the zipper pull between my thumb and index finger. "Hold still," I said. "I am holding still," she said. "You're doing a thing with your shoulders." "My shoulders are fine. They're tense. It's pulling the fabric." She exhaled. I felt it, the deliberate release of tension, her shoulders dropping 1/2 inch. And in the process of that small movement, her head tilted very slightly to the left, and the back of her neck became more visible, and I made the firm, clear decision to focus exclusively on the zipper. The fabric had caught in a tiny fold. I worked it loose carefully, using one hand to keep gentle tension on the material below and easing the pull upward with the other. It took about 45 seconds. Somewhere in those 45 seconds, my fingers brushed the back of her neck. It was accidental. It was completely, entirely accidental. But Claire went very still in a way that was different from the deliberate stillness of 30 seconds ago. This was the stillness of someone who has just noticed something they weren't expecting. Neither of us said anything. I finished with the zipper, stepped back, cleared my throat. "There," I said. My voice came out lower than I intended. She turned around slowly, and the expression on her face, whatever she had been wearing before the smirk, and the practicality, and the 10 minutes of frustrated zipper fighting was completely replaced by something I could not immediately interpret, except that it made my chest feel too small for what was happening inside it. "Thank you," she said. "Sure," I said. We stood in the kitchen in the particular silence of two people who have just noticed something they were trying not to notice, and then her phone went off. Not a ringtone, an alarm. The specific aggressive triple buzz pattern she had assigned to messages from Margaret Sloan, her boss at the Halston Grand. Because as Claire had explained to me 5 months ago, when Margaret messaged, it was never optional, and it was never small. Claire grabbed her phone from the counter. I watched her face move through 3 distinct expressions in about 4 seconds. Confusion, then understanding, then a particular quality of horror that I had seen exactly twice before. Once when she realized she had agreed to cover a coworker's shift on the same night as her cousin's wedding, and once when she discovered that she had been accidentally CC'd on an email chain containing the catering director's actual opinions about her organizational skills. "Oh no," she said. "What?" She looked up at me, then back at the phone, then at me again. "What happened?" I asked. "Margaret," she said slowly, "has apparently been telling the hotel's major donor investors all week that I am bringing my boyfriend to the autumn preview tonight." I processed this. "You don't have a boyfriend." "I am aware of this, Ryan, thank you." "Why does Margaret think you have a boyfriend?" "Because..." She pressed her fingers against her forehead. "I mentioned you. Weeks ago. I was telling her about how I had reorganized the donor outreach timeline, and I said something like, 'My roommate helped me think through the sequence,' and she apparently heard my boyfriend, and I never corrected it because it didn't seem important, and now..." She held up the phone. "Now William Prescott is flying in from New York tonight, and he specifically asked if he could meet the man who's been supporting my work. Because apparently, Margaret told him that my professional improvement this year is connected to having a stable and supportive relationship. And if I show up alone, she's going to think I lied to her. And if she thinks I lied to her right now, 2 weeks before the conference promotion decision..." She stopped. She looked at me. I felt the question coming before she asked it. "No," I said. "Ryan, I know what you're going to ask. You don't even know what I'm going to ask. You're going to ask me to go to a fancy hotel gala tonight and pretend to be your boyfriend in front of your boss, a major investor, and various other people who I will have to charm and remember facts about." Silence. "That is what you're going to ask," I said. "It's one evening," she said. "Claire. Ryan, I know how this sounds. And I know the rules we made, and I know this is exactly the kind of thing that makes roommate situations complicated. And I would not ask you if I had any other option, but I have been working toward this promotion for 2 years, and Margaret is already on the fence about whether I am ready, and if I show up having apparently lied to her about having a boyfriend." "You didn't lie." "She will think I lied." "Then tell her the truth now, before the event." "If I tell her the truth now, she will spend the entire donor preview watching me like she's waiting for me to fail. You know how she is. She doesn't forget mistakes. She files them away and uses them exactly when it matters most." She paused. "Please, one evening. We go in, we smile, you remember 3 names, and we come home. That's all." I looked at her. She was standing in the kitchen in the emerald green dress with the zipper I had just fixed, and her earrings were catching the light, and there was a kind of vulnerability in her voice that she did not often let surface, the voice underneath the smirk and the legal pad and the 3-suitcase confidence. I was going to say no. I had a very clear, sensible answer ready, which was, "Claire, this is the exact definition of making things complicated, and we both agreed not to do that, and I am the wrong person to ask, because I am not very good at pretending, and I like you too much to pretend effectively." What I said instead was, "I have one suit." She blinked. "What?" "I have one suit. It's navy. I wore it to my cousin's rehearsal dinner, and it fits fine, but it is not a charity gala suit." The vulnerability shifted. Her eyes got a specific brightness that I recognized as relief working its way up through caution. "It will be perfect," she said. "And I need you to tell me 3 things about every person I'm going to meet before we walk in the door." "Done." "And if I hold your hand in there, Claire?" I stopped, made myself finish it. "If I hold your hand in there, I may not be able to pretend about everything." The kitchen went very quiet. She heard what I didn't say directly. I know she did because of what she did with her face, not the smirk, not the practicality, not the reporter quick response. She just looked at me for a long moment with something careful and real moving behind her eyes. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay," I said. And that was how I ended up in the bathroom 40 minutes later, wearing the navy suit, staring at myself in the mirror, and having a very direct internal conversation about what I was actually doing and why. The suit still fit. That was something. I had last worn it 14 months ago, and I had apparently not changed shape significantly in that time, which felt like the only thing currently under control. I heard Claire's footsteps in the hallway. The knock on the bathroom door was quick, professional. "Ready," she called. "Almost," I said. I heard her pause just outside the door. Then Ryan. "Yeah. Thank you, genuinely." I looked at the mirror for another 2 seconds. The man looking back at me had a very specific expression. The expression of someone who has just agreed to do something that has the clear potential to change everything, and is not entirely sure which direction the change is going. "Don't thank me yet," I said. When I came out of the bathroom, she was standing in the hallway with her coat over one arm and her small gold clutch in her other hand. And she looked at me the way I had looked at her in the kitchen, that brief, unguarded moment before the practiced expression returns. "The suit is good," she said. "The dress is better," I said. Neither of us looked away immediately. Then she held up the gold clutch and said, "Can you get my tie? I mean your tie. Can you—" She stopped, laughed at herself, which was a sound I loved so much it was almost painful. "Can I fix your tie? It's crooked." She stepped forward, and I stayed completely still while her hands reached up and adjusted the knot, and this time the proximity was deliberate on both sides. Me staying, her reaching, and the back of my neck was warm in a way that had nothing to do with the bathroom's heating. "There," she said. Her hands paused just a second too long before dropping. "While I have you," I said quietly. "Standing this close, I should probably mention that I have known for a while now." She looked up. "Known what?" "That you wait up when I work late. That you save me the dumpling. That you wear my hoodie when you're anxious, not because you're cold." She went very still. "I have known for a while," I said. "And I didn't say anything because of the rules we made. But if I'm going in there tonight and holding your hand and calling myself your boyfriend, I think you should know that I was not keeping quiet because I didn't feel it." The silence in the hallway stretched. "Then why?" she said, very quietly. "Because you had the promotion to go after," I said. "And I was afraid that if I said it and it didn't work out, you'd have to pack 3 suitcases and move out, and I would rather live next to you without saying it than lose you by saying it wrong." She blinked. Once, twice. And then her hands came back up, and she straightened my tie one more time, even though it did not need straightening, and she said, "I wear your hoodie because it smells exactly like you, and when you're not in the apartment, the quiet gets too quiet and the hoodie helps." My chest did something complicated. "And I save you the dumpling," she continued, not quite meeting my eyes, "because you always look at the container to see if there's any left, and I don't want you to look and find nothing." I did not trust my voice immediately, so I let the silence hold it for a moment. Then, "We're going to be late," I said. "Yes," she said. "We'll finish this conversation." "Yes," she said again, and this time she met my eyes. "We will." We walked out of apartment 4C together side by side, and the hallway light was on because I had left it on out of habit, not knowing we would be walking out instead of coming in, and it lit the small space between us as we moved toward the elevator, and Claire's hand bumped mine once on the way down the hall, and neither of us moved away from it. I was not pretending. I was already failing completely at pretending. And the night had not even started. We took a car to the Halston Grand because Claire said showing up in the ancient Honda I used for grocery runs would give Margaret an aneurysm, which I felt was probably accurate. In the back of the car, she briefed me with the efficiency of someone who had spent 2 years managing logistics under pressure. Margaret Sloan, boss, direct demanding watches everyone for signs of weakness. Do not try to charm her. She does not respond to charm. Respond to her with competence. If she asks you something about my work, be specific. Got it. What specifically? Tell her I redesigned the entire donor communication timeline in August and cut the follow-up response rate from 11 days to 3. She knows the numbers. She'll recognize that you know them too. Donor communication timeline, August 11 days to 3. Next. David Cho, coworker. He's been at the hotel 6 years, and he is the most reliable gossip in the building, which means he is watching everything and will absolutely mention anything unusual to Margaret by Monday morning. He is also very sweet and he loves basketball. If he brings it up, you are a Bulls fan. I am a Bulls fan in real life. I know, that's why I picked it. A small smile. And William Prescott. He's the one who matters tonight. Senior investor, New York office. He flies in 3 times a year. He lost his wife 2 years ago. They had been married 34 years, and he has become very focused since then on projects that center community connection. That's why he responded to the story Margaret told him about my work. He wants to believe that people with stable support systems do better work. Does he want to believe it because it's true? I said, or because he's still missing having someone stable beside him? She paused. She turned to look at me in a way that was different from the briefing face. That's a very perceptive thing to say. I design things for people, I said. You learn to understand why they want what they want, instead of just what they say they want. She was quiet for a moment. Both probably. He's a complicated man. I'll be careful with him. She nodded. And then more quietly, Ryan. Yeah. I know this is strange. I know it's... She seemed to be choosing words carefully. I know it's asking a lot. Not just the logistics. The whole thing. It's not a lot, I said. It's one night of telling people that you're important to me. That part isn't very hard. She did not respond to that, but her hand resting on her knee turned palm up in the space between us. I placed my hand in hers. Her fingers closed around mine. Neither of us said anything about it. Outside the window, Chicago moved past us, lit up and cold and enormous. And inside the car, there was a warmth that had nothing to do with the heating, and everything to do with 2 people who had been standing next to something real for 9 months and had finally stopped pretending it wasn't there. When the car pulled up to the Halston Grand, Claire looked at the entrance, the lit marquee, the guests in formal wear moving through the lobby doors, the hotel staff in their pressed uniforms at the top of the stairs, and I felt her hand tighten slightly in mine. Ready, she said. I squeezed back. Tell me one more time what they mean to you. The promotion. The conference. She looked at me instead of the building. It's the first time I've ever been this close to something I built myself. Everything before this has been me executing someone else's plan. This conference, the National Charity Summit in March, is mine. I designed the approach. I built the donor relationships. I pitched the format. If I lead it, it's mine. And I want... She stopped. Then softer. I want to know what it feels like to stand in something I actually built. I looked at her for a long moment. Then let's go make sure you get to find out, I said. We walked through the entrance of the Halston Grand together, her hand still in mine, and I was not pretending about any of it. Not the pride when I introduced myself. Not the warmth when she smiled at me across a crowded room. Not the way my jaw tightened slightly when 20 minutes later, a tall man in a very expensive suit walked into the event space and Claire's hand went rigid in mine. I felt it before I saw his face. Claire, I said quietly. I see him, she said. Her voice was completely flat. Who is he? Her answer came after exactly 1 beat of silence. Nathan, she said. My ex. And the evening, which had already been complicated, became something else entirely. His name was Nathan Caldwell, and he moved through a room like someone who had never once been told that he was too much. Tall, polished, the kind of suit that communicated money without advertising it, a smile that arrived on his face with the ease of long practice. He was not looking for us when he came in, but he found us anyway. Claire. He said her name the way people say a word they have owned for a long time, familiar proprietary acclaim dressed up as a greeting. She did not let go of my hand. "Nathan," she said. Her voice was perfectly level. "I didn't know you would be here tonight. Prescott invited me. We worked together on the Meridian project last spring." His eyes moved to me with a quick, calibrated assessment of someone who decides things immediately. "And you are Ryan Parker," I said. I did not add anything to that. I just held his gaze and let him work with it. "Ryan." He said it like he was filing it. "You're the boyfriend." "I am," I said. He looked back at Claire. "How long?" "Long enough," she said. Something moved across his face, not a reaction exactly, more like a recalculation. He had come in expecting to find something, and whatever he had expected, this was not it. Me standing next to her with my hand in hers and my voice completely steady was apparently not the script he had written. "Nathan." Margaret Sloane appeared at Claire's shoulder with the unerring timing of a woman who tracked every variable in her event space simultaneously. "I see you've found our star planner. You know I've been telling William all evening that Claire's work this year has been exceptional." "Claire has always been talented," Nathan said. He was still looking at me when he said it. "At making things look smooth from the outside." I felt Claire's hand tighten in mine. I wanted to respond. I had a very specific response, forming one that would have communicated exactly what I thought of a man who framed a woman's professional achievements as cosmetic. But Claire got there first. She turned to Margaret with a smile that was real and warm and 300% deliberate. "Margaret," she said, "is William Prescott available? Ryan's been wanting to meet him all evening, and I think now is the right moment." Margaret brightened. "Absolutely. Come with me." And Claire led us away from Nathan Caldwell without a backward glance, and my hand was still in hers, and I made a private decision that the evening was going to be exactly what she needed it to be. Whatever it cost me personally. Whatever it changed. She had been waiting long enough to stand in something she built. I was not going to let him be the thing that blocked the door. William Prescott was not what Ryan expected. He had built a picture in his head during the car ride over some version of the powerful investor who had everything and knew it, the kind of man who assessed people the way he assessed balance sheets. But the man Margaret led them toward was shorter than Nathan by 4 inches with white hair, and the kind of eyes that had spent decades watching people and no longer needed to work very hard at it. He shook Ryan's hand first. That surprised Ryan. He had expected him to look at Claire. "Margaret tells me you've been her anchor this year," Prescott said. "Not aggressive, not testing, just direct the way people get when they have stopped having time for small talk." "She doesn't need an anchor," Ryan said. "She needs someone who gets out of the way when she's moving fast and hands her things when she needs them without being asked." Prescott looked at him for a moment, then at Claire, then back. "That's an interesting way to put it," he said. "It's the accurate way," Ryan said. Claire, standing beside him, did not look at him, but her fingers adjusted in his hand a small involuntary press that lasted exactly 1 second and said everything. Prescott smiled. "Not the performed kind. The real kind. The kind that reaches the eyes of someone who has lived long enough to recognize when a person is telling the truth without rehearsing it." "Tell me about March," he said to Claire. "Margaret's given me the broad strokes. I want the details from you." And Claire talked. Ryan had heard her talk about work before at the kitchen table on the couch, standing in the hallway with her coat still on, because she had come home with something she needed to process out loud. He had heard her competent and anxious and frustrated and quietly proud. But he had never heard her talk like this in a room where it mattered to a man who could change her trajectory with a single phone call, with all of the polished and precise architecture of 2 years of careful work, laid out in clear, confident language. She was extraordinary. He already knew that. He had known it for months in the quiet way you know things you're not saying out loud. but watching Prescott lean in, genuinely physically lean in, to hear her finish a sentence about the conference's regional donor structure made something shift in Ryan's chest that went well beyond pride. She had built this, every piece of it, and she was finally letting someone see it clearly. 12 minutes into the conversation, David Cho appeared at Ryan's elbow with 2 glasses of sparkling water and a grin that communicated he had been watching from across the room and was now collecting information. "Ryan, right?" David said, handing him a glass. "I'm David." "I know," Ryan said. "Claire mentioned you. 6 years at the Hotel Bulls fan." David's grin widened. "She prepped you." "She briefed me," Ryan corrected. "Same thing." He tilted his head toward Prescott and Claire, still deep in conversation. "She's good, isn't she?" "She's exceptional," Ryan said. Not a question. "Yeah." David watched her for a moment. Something more serious moved through his expression. "She's been better this year than she's ever been. Whatever you've been doing or not doing, whichever it is, it's working." Ryan looked at him. "Not doing? Not getting in her way," David said simply. "Her last guy." He stopped. "Never mind. Not my story." "Nathan," Ryan said. David's eyes sharpened. "She told you about him." "Some?" "Then you know enough." He took a sip of his water. "He's here tonight, by the way. Came in about 20 minutes ago." "I know," Ryan said. "We met him." Something in his voice must have landed correctly, because David looked at him with a new quality of attention, the look of someone revising their initial assessment upward. "How'd that go?" David asked. "Smoothly," Ryan said. And David laughed, genuine surprised, and said, "I think I like you." At 8:47 p.m., with the evening running at a quiet cruise, Margaret pulled Claire aside for what Claire had warned Ryan would happen: the check-in. The moment where Margaret assessed the invisible things: composure, confidence. Whether the person she was considering promoting looked like someone ready for the next level. Ryan stayed where he was near the long windows with David holding his water glass, and very deliberately not watching in a way that he was absolutely watching. He could see Claire's profile, could see the way she was listening to Margaret, not nodding eagerly, not shrinking, just listening with the steady patience of someone who had decided she no longer needed approval to feel valid. Then he saw Nathan moving, casually, unhurried. The practiced drift of someone heading nowhere in particular, except that nowhere happened to be the same direction as Claire and Margaret. Ryan was moving before he made the decision. "Excuse me," he said to David, who saw the direction and did not ask questions. He came up beside Claire, naturally, not rushing, not inserting himself, just arriving the way a person arrives when they belong in the space. He put his hand at her back. Not possessive, not performative, just there. Claire felt it. He saw her posture change by approximately 2 degrees, not relieved exactly. More like a tension she had been maintaining for 2 minutes quietly dissolved. "Margaret," he said, as if he had simply come over to join them. "I was hoping to ask you something about the conference logistics Claire mentioned. The donor segmentation she redesigned, is that something William Prescott has seen yet? Because when I was helping her map it out in August, I kept thinking it was the kind of structure that would land differently if someone saw it visually rather than in a summary." Margaret looked at him with the measuring expression he now recognized as her default. "She showed you the donor segmentation," Margaret said. "She works through everything out loud," Ryan said. "I don't understand all of it, but I understand what she's trying to solve. And she solved it well." Nathan had arrived in their perimeter. Ryan felt him before he spoke. "Claire," Nathan said with the ease of a man entering a conversation he had not been invited to, "I was just talking to James Whitmore about the Meridian project timeline. Apparently your department's communication lag in Q3 was a factor in the delay." The air shifted. Claire turned to Nathan with the expression of someone who has been waiting for this, not dreading it. Waiting for it. "The Q3 lag was a staffing issue that predated my involvement by 6 weeks, she said. "I fixed it in 3. Margaret has the documentation." "I'm sure she does," Nathan said. Smooth, agreeable, which was the most dangerous version of him. "I'm just passing along what James mentioned." "Then tell James his timeline is off," Claire said. I'd be happy to send him the corrected version. Margaret was watching this exchange with the careful neutrality of someone taking notes she would review later. Ryan looked at Nathan. Nathan looked at Ryan. And Ryan said very quietly, very clearly, "She doesn't need you to pass anything along for her. She speaks for herself. You've known her long enough to know that." The small group went very still. Nathan's jaw tightened, just slightly, the first real crack in the polished surface. "Of course," he said. He picked up his glass in a small salute that meant nothing and moved away. Margaret watched him go, then looked at Ryan, then at Claire. "I can see why you brought him," Margaret said, and Ryan could not entirely read whether she meant it as a compliment or a calculation, but Claire's hand found his arm, and that was answer enough. At 9:15 p.m. The dinner portion ended, and the room shifted. People moving more freely. Smaller conversations forming and reforming. Ryan and Claire found a momentary pocket of space near the balcony doors, and for the first time since they had walked in, they were alone. "You didn't have to do that," Claire said. Her voice was low. They were standing close because the room was loud, and it was the natural distance of two people sharing a private conversation in a public space. "With Nathan, I had it." "I know you had it," Ryan said. "I wasn't stepping in because I thought you needed help. I was stepping in because he was doing the thing where he makes a point to Margaret while pretending to be neutral, and I wanted Margaret watching him instead of believing him." She looked at him. "That is a very specific read." "I pay attention," he said. She was quiet for a moment, something working through her expression that he let happen without rushing. "I used to do that all the time," she said finally. "Not bitter. Just factual, the way you state something you have finally finished being wounded by. Make observations about my work to the people above me. Always framed as concern. Always timed perfectly." "And you spent how long thinking it was help?" Ryan said. She closed her eyes briefly. "Too long." "Then I'm glad I was here for this one." "Me too," she said, quietly, and then softer. "Ryan." "Yeah. I meant what I said to him, what I said about you." She was looking at him directly now. No smirk, no deflection, no layer of practiced casualness. "Before, at the table, when I said you were steady and kind and the first person I want to call." His chest was doing the complicated thing again. "I know," he said. "I need you to know I meant it," she said. "Not for him, for you." "Claire, I'm not saying this because we're at a party, and you showed up in a navy suit, and you were decent to William Prescott, and you looked at Nathan like you would absolutely follow through on whatever you were thinking." She paused, half a smile, gone quickly. Although for the record that last part was genuinely impressive. "What are you saying?" he said. She looked at him for a long moment. "I'm saying that I save you the dumpling," she said. "You know what that means." He did know. He had known for a long time. The balcony doors were to his left. The party was behind them, moving and chattering and performing its social function. And in the small space between where they were standing, something that had been building for 9 months was very close to the surface. He said her name once, just her name, and she said, "I know." And then Margaret's voice cut across the noise from 20 feet away. Not panicked, but urgent in the specific register of someone for whom urgency is always controlled, and they both looked up at exactly the same time. "Claire, Ryan." Margaret was moving toward them with purpose. "William wants to say goodnight, and he's asked to speak to you both first." They separated not dramatically, just the natural pull of function returning, and moved back into the room. Prescott was standing with his coat already over his arm, which Ryan recognized as a man who does not linger past the point of a conversation being finished. "Miss Bennett," he said, "I've been thinking about what you described earlier. The regional segmentation, the donor tiers. You built that whole structure yourself." "Yes," Claire said, "from scratch." "I had some earlier frameworks to work from," she said, "but the architecture is mine. I spent most of July redesigning it." He nodded slowly. "And the digital event management system Margaret mentioned, that's something you put in place." "It's something I sourced, tested, and implemented," she said. I had help troubleshooting it earlier today, actually. She glanced at Ryan. Ryan shook his head slightly. Don't pull me in. This is yours. She understood. She always understood. I had it stress tested before tonight, she finished. Everything you saw this evening running smoothly was running on infrastructure I put in place 6 weeks ago. Prescott looked at her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. I look forward to seeing what you do in March, he said. Claire shook his hand. And Ryan watched something happen in her face at that moment. Not performance, not relief, but the quiet and complete expression of a person who has just been seen for exactly what they are. He felt it like a physical thing watching her. She had waited 2 years for that. After Prescott left, the party continued its final hour without the weight of consequence. David Cho came and found them and made Ryan laugh twice about absolutely nothing, which was its own kind of gift. Claire worked the room the way she always did. Competent, warm, present. But every few minutes, she found him with her eyes, and he found her back, and the invisible thread between them pulled taut and easy and real. At 10:40 p.m., Nathan Caldwell appeared on the balcony. Ryan saw him first. The balcony was mostly empty at this point, the cold October air having sent most guests back inside. Nathan was standing with a glass looking at the city, and he was alone, which Ryan recognized as a setup, though, for what exactly he wasn't certain. He found out 6 minutes later when Margaret came to find Claire and said quietly, but not quietly enough, "We need to talk, now." William left, but before he did, Nathan Caldwell told him something. Claire went very still. Ryan reached for her hand. She let him take it, but she was already looking at Margaret with the clear eyes of someone who knows the floor has just dropped. "What did he say?" Claire asked. Margaret's expression was controlled, but Ryan could see behind it the particular tension of a supervisor who has been embarrassed and is deciding very quickly what to do about it. He said, Margaret began and then stopped, looked at Ryan, looked at Claire. He said that Ryan is not your boyfriend. He said that you asked a neighbor or a friend. He was unclear on the specifics to come tonight and play a role because I had misunderstood something you said weeks ago about a roommate, and you were too afraid to correct me. The balcony was cold, and the city was loud below it, and the silence between the three of them was the kind that has weight and edges. Ryan looked at Claire. Claire was looking at Margaret. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were steady. And in the 30 seconds that followed, Ryan watched Claire Bennett make a decision. He could actually see it moving through her, the way a wave moves through water, the way a person chooses who they are going to be in the moment when being someone easier is also available. He's right, she said. Margaret blinked. About the beginning, Claire said. You misheard me weeks ago. Ryan is my roommate. I asked him to come tonight because I was afraid that admitting the misunderstanding would make me look unreliable right before the promotion decision. The city noise filled the silence. That was wrong, Claire said. I should have corrected it the moment it happened. I didn't, and I'm sorry. Margaret looked at her, then at Ryan. And you? I came because she asked me, Ryan said, and because she deserved to have someone in her corner tonight. But everything you saw her do, Prescott, the donor framework, the event systems, the conversation she had about March, that was entirely her. I fixed a technical glitch in the event software this afternoon because she texted me and asked. That's it. Everything else was already built. Silence again. Nathan materialized at the edge of the balcony entrance, and Ryan recognized the expression he was wearing, the satisfaction of someone who has watched a plan execute. But he also saw something Nathan had not calculated, for he had been watching Margaret, not Claire. She's been doing this since I knew her, Nathan said, and his tone was the most dangerous version of him. Soft, almost kind, the voice of a person pretending to be concerned. Making things look more solid than they are. Using people to make herself appear more stable, more capable. I just think William Prescott deserved to know what he was actually investing in. The balcony went very, very quiet. Claire turned to look at Nathan, and Ryan stayed completely still because he could actually feel that this was the moment. Not his moment. Hers. You know what I used to believe, Claire said. Her voice was calm in the way deep water is calm, nothing on the surface, tremendous pressure underneath. I used to believe that when you said things like that, you were trying to protect me, that you were being honest about my limitations so I wouldn't embarrass myself. I spent a year and a half believing that. Nathan started to speak. I'm still talking, she said. He stopped. I don't have limitations you identified, she said. I have limitations you invented and handed to me at the exact moments when I was most likely to believe them. And what I understand now, standing here in this hotel in front of the project that I built from nothing, is that every time you told me I was reaching too far, you were not protecting me. She paused. You were protecting your ability to stay comfortable next to someone who wasn't growing faster than you. The balcony held that silence. Nathan's face did something complicated. Margaret was not moving. Nathan, Claire continued, and her voice was very even now. The only thing you've done tonight is show William Prescott that you are the kind of person who goes around people instead of through them. And that is not a referendum on my character. That is a description of yours. She turned back to Margaret. If this changes your assessment of my readiness for the promotion, she said, I understand. I made a mistake. I'm telling you that directly, and I'm not asking you to overlook it. I'm asking you to weigh it against 2 years of work that I can stand behind. Margaret looked at her for a long moment. Then she looked at Nathan. Then she said, Nathan, thank you for your input this evening. I'll keep it in appropriate context. A pause that contained a full paragraph. Now if you'll excuse us. Nathan left. He left because there was nothing left for him to do in that space. Claire had taken everything he had tried to use against her and made it into something he couldn't touch. Ryan had watched it happen, and he felt something he didn't have an immediate word for, something that was pride and awe and a grief for every moment in her past when no one had been there to see her do that. When Nathan was gone, Margaret stood with them for a moment in the October cold, and she said, The conference is in March. I'll need your detailed proposal by November 15th. Claire blinked. The promotion isn't confirmed, Margaret said. But the conference is yours if the proposal is what tonight suggested it will be. She went back inside. Claire and Ryan stood on the balcony alone, and the city was below them, and the cold was real, and neither of them moved immediately. Then Claire made a sound that was not quite a laugh, and not quite a breath, and was entirely a person releasing something they had been holding for a very long time. Hey, Ryan said. She looked at him. You did that, he said. All of it. Her eyes were bright. Not crying. Something more than that, and less than that. Ryan, she said. Yeah, I'm done pretending. Her voice was barely above the sound of the city below. I don't want a fake boyfriend tonight, and I don't want a roommate tomorrow, and I don't want to keep saving you the last dumpling without telling you why. He looked at her. The space between them closed not all at once, not dramatically, but the small, careful distance that had been maintained for 9 months simply stopped being maintained. Then don't, he said, and she closed the remaining distance, and her mouth met his, and the kiss was not what the movies prepare you for. It was not sweeping, or cinematic, or perfectly timed. It was tentative for exactly 1 second, and then it was not, and it was her hand against the lapel of his navy suit and his hand at her jaw. And it was 9 months of left-on hallway lights and saved dumplings and fixed zippers and 2 a.m. conversations about fear, resolved in the cold October air above a city that didn't know or care. When it ended, she stayed close. That's going to change things, she said quietly. Everything worth having changes things, he said. She pulled back just enough to look at him. Something luminous in her expression, something new. We should go back in, she said. Yeah, he said. Neither of them moved immediately. Then she laughed, the real one, the surprised one, the one that had undone him for 9 months, and took his hand and led him back through the balcony doors. And Ryan Parker, who had spent the better part of a year being the reliable, quiet, uncomplicated roommate, walked back into that gala, holding the hand of the woman he loved, and did not pretend about a single thing. They were back inside for exactly 11 minutes before everything fell apart again. Ryan felt it coming, the way you feel. Weather before it arrives. A pressure shift in the room. Something in the way Margaret moved across the space toward them with a different quality of urgency than anything she had shown all evening. Not the controlled urgency of a woman managing logistics. The tight, compressed urgency of a woman managing damage. Claire felt it too. Her hand tightened in his before Margaret said a word. Claire. Margaret stopped in front of them. Her voice was low-clipped, precise. William called me from the car. Ryan watched Claire's face. She did not flinch, but something in her eyes went very still. He wants a meeting, Margaret continued. Monday, first thing. He has questions about the event management system. What kind of questions? Claire asked. Margaret's expression did something complicated. Nathan spoke to him again before he left, apparently on the way out in the lobby. He told William that the digital system running tonight had multiple critical failures in the first hour that were covered up before the guests noticed. He implied that you had presented a smoother evening than the reality. The words landed in the air between them. Ryan processed them in sequence. Nathan had left the balcony, walked through the event space, caught Prescott on his way out, and in the 3 minutes between leaving and the elevator closing, had done exactly what he had come to this event to do. That's not accurate, Ryan said. Margaret looked at him directly for the first time in this conversation. Can you speak to that? Yes, Ryan said. I was the one who fixed the system issue this afternoon. Claire texted me at 4:15 because the backup integration had a sync error. I remoted in, found the conflict, and resolved it before 6 o'clock. The system ran without issues all evening. There were no failures during the event. What Nathan described didn't happen. Nathan told William it happened during setup, Margaret said. He said he overheard the catering coordinator talking about it. The catering coordinator had nothing to do with the digital system, Claire said. Her voice was completely level. The issue was in the donor registration integration. It was resolved 2 hours before doors opened. I have the timestamps. You have documentation, Margaret said. I document everything, Claire said. I have had to. That last sentence landed with a weight that had nothing to do with the current conversation. Margaret heard it. Ryan saw her hear it. Monday morning, Margaret said. 8 o'clock. Bring everything. She turned and moved away. Ryan exhaled. Claire did not. He looked at her. She was staring at the middle distance, running something through her head. At a speed he recognized the way she processed when she was 2 steps ahead of the problem and 3 steps ahead of the solution. He went to Prescott in the lobby, she said quietly. Not to Ryan specifically, just thinking out loud in his direction. Yeah, Ryan said. He knew I'd fixed it. He knew the system worked. She paused. He was at the hotel earlier today. I saw his name on the vendor check-in log when I came through the lobby at noon. I didn't think anything of it. Ryan looked at her. He was here during setup. He knew about the sync error. Her voice went flat. He was watching the whole time and waiting for the right moment. The understanding of it moved through Ryan like cold water. Nathan had not come to the gala and improvised. He had come prepared. He had known about the technical issue, either from watching or from someone talking, and he had waited all evening for the strategic moment to use it. The balcony conversation had been the first move. Going to Prescott in the lobby had been the second. And both of them, Ryan understood now, had been designed not to destroy Claire in the room, but to plant a question in the most important mind in the building. Not a question about whether she had lied about a boyfriend. A question about whether she was the kind of person who covered things up. That was the kill shot. Not the personal embarrassment, the professional credibility. Ryan said her name. She came back from wherever she had been processing. I know, she said. He's good at it, Ryan said. Not a compliment, an acknowledgement. He has been doing it for 2 years, she said. I just didn't see it when it was pointed at me. She looked at Ryan. Something raw moved through her face and was quickly professionally steadied. Monday is going to be a fight. Monday is going to be a documentation review, Ryan said, which you will win, because you actually do document everything. She nodded. But he could see she was not entirely in the room. Part of her was already in the Monday morning meeting, running the variables, calculating the risks. He let her have that for a moment. Then David Cho appeared beside them with the subtlety of a man who had been watching the Margaret interaction from 12 feet away and had been working his way over since. "Okay," David said in the tone of someone who has decided to be direct. "What happened? Because Margaret just had the face." "Nathan," Claire said. David closed his eyes briefly. Of course he did. He opened them. "What specifically?" He told Prescott there were technical failures tonight that I covered up. David's expression shifted. Not shock exactly, more like the confirmation of something he had suspected for longer than tonight. "That is a lie." "Yes," Claire said. "You have documentation." "Yes." "Then you're going to be fine," David said, with the conviction of someone who does not comfort people with empty reassurance. "Margaret will be the judge of fine," Claire said. "No," David said. "William Prescott will be the judge of fine. And what he saw tonight from you was a woman who told the truth when she didn't have to. In my experience, that counts for something with him." He put a hand briefly on Claire's shoulder, the solid, uncomplicated gesture of someone who had worked beside her long enough to know when she needed anchoring and when she needed space, and then moved away. Ryan looked at Claire. She was watching David go with an expression that he had not seen before, something between gratitude and the particular vulnerability of a person who has just realized they have more people in their corner than they thought. "He's right," Ryan said. "Maybe," she said. "Not maybe," Ryan said. "Prescott spent 40 minutes with you tonight. Nathan spent 4 minutes with him in a lobby. Those are not equal weights." She looked at him. "But you're still scared," he said. "I'm terrified," she said with a directness that cost her something. "I have been terrified since Margaret walked toward us 3 minutes ago, but I'm not—" She stopped, searched for the right word. "I'm not the kind of terrified that makes me want to run. I'm the kind that makes me want to go find Nathan Caldwell and look him in the eye and dare him to say it again when I have the timestamps on my phone." Ryan looked at her for a long moment. "Find him," he said. She blinked. "What? If that's what you want to do, do it." He kept his voice steady. "I'm not going to tell you to wait for Monday and be patient. If you want to confront him tonight, I'm standing right here." Something moved through her expression. Not surprise exactly, more like relief mixed with something careful. "You're not going to tell me to be strategic," she said. "Being strategic is your job," he said. "Showing up is mine." She exhaled. And for one moment, just one, the composed professional surface dropped completely. Not for long, maybe 3 seconds. And what was underneath was the real version of Claire Bennett, 25 years old, who had been carrying the weight of 2 years of Nathan Caldwell's quiet destruction, and 2 years of working twice as hard to compensate for what he had convinced her were her deficiencies, standing in the middle of a hotel gala at 11 o'clock at night and deciding, with full clarity, who she was going to be. Then it reset. Professional Claire returned. But it was different now. It was the same competence, the same precision, but worn by someone who knew exactly what was underneath it and had chosen to put it on consciously. "Let's find him," she said. They found Nathan near the bar alone, scrolling his phone with the ease of a man who had accomplished what he came to accomplish and was winding down. He looked up when they arrived. He looked at Ryan first, then at Claire. "You spoke to Prescott in the lobby," Claire said. No preamble. Nathan met her eyes without hesitation. "I told him what I knew." "You told him a version of what you observed," Claire said. "The system had a sync error during setup. That's true. Ryan fixed it at 5:47 p.m. That's also true. The event ran without a single technical failure. Also true. What you told William was technically adjacent to true and deliberately designed to imply something that wasn't." Nathan put his phone in his pocket. "I was being transparent with an investor I have a relationship with." "You were being strategic," Claire said. "And I used to confuse those two things when you did them to me, and I don't anymore." Nathan's jaw moved. "Claire, I'm going to say one thing," she said. "And I want you to actually hear it, not process it and identify how to respond to it. Hear it." He went still. "The way you operate," she said. "The quiet observation. The precisely timed disclosure. The concern that's actually a weapon. I used to think that was love. I used to think it meant you were paying attention, that you cared enough to be watching. It took me until tonight, standing on that balcony, to understand that attention and surveillance are not the same thing. Something flickered across Nathan's face. Ryan watched it, the first genuine thing he had seen there all evening. "I'm not your project anymore," Claire said. "And what you did tonight isn't going to work because William Prescott watched me tell the truth when it was easier to keep the lie, and that is worth more than whatever you said in the lobby." She paused. "Good night, Nathan." She turned. Ryan held Nathan's gaze for exactly 2 seconds. He did not say anything. There was nothing to add. Claire had closed every door. He turned and walked with her, and did not look back. At 11:08 p.m. They were in the elevator heading down to the lobby, and the doors were barely closed before Claire leaned back against the wall and pressed her palms flat against it and took one long, slow breath. "Okay," she said. "Okay," Ryan said. That was terrifying. "You were extraordinary." She looked at him sideways. "You're biased." "I'm accurate," he said. "There's a difference." She smiled, the real one, the one that reached her eyes, the one that had no performance in it. "Ryan," she said. "Yeah." "What happened on the balcony?" She stopped, started again. "What I said. What we did. I need you to know that was not the adrenaline talking. That was not the Nathan of it, or the Prescott of it, or any of the rest of it." He looked at her. "I know." "How do you know?" "Because you've been saving me the dumpling for 9 months, he said. "And neither of us does things accidentally." She laughed. And it was the surprised laugh, the one that got away from her before she could manage it. The one he loved the most. The elevator opened into the lobby. They walked out into the cold Chicago night, and the air hit them both, and neither of them spoke for a moment, and the city was loud and real around them, and the gala was behind them, and Monday morning existed somewhere in the future, but right now it was just the two of them on the sidewalk outside the Halston Grand, and everything had changed. "Car," Ryan said. "Car," she said. But neither of them reached for their phones immediately. They stood in the cold for a moment longer, shoulders almost touching, looking at the city. "I'm scared about Monday," she said quietly. "I know," he said. "Tell me it's going to be okay." "I can't tell you that with certainty," he said. "But I can tell you that you told the truth when it was hard, and you built something real, and you have documentation, and William Prescott is not a stupid man." She absorbed that, and he added, "If Monday goes sideways, you will rebuild, because that is what you do. I watched you do it tonight in real time." She turned to look at him. The streetlight caught her face, and the gold earrings, and the emerald dress, and she looked exactly like the woman who had walked into his kitchen 6 hours ago and started something neither of them had planned. "You know," she said, "for someone who spent 9 months pretending to be just a roommate, you are very bad at it." "I was never pretending," he said. "I was waiting." She blinked. "For what?" "For you to save me the dumpling and tell me why." She stepped forward and kissed him again, shorter this time, warmer, without the October balcony weight of crisis and confession. Just the straightforward, uncomplicated fact of two people who had stopped pretending. When she stepped back, she was smiling. "Get the car," she said. "Getting the car," he said. The drive home was quiet, in a way that felt nothing like the silence of two people who have nothing to say. It was the quiet of two people who have said the important things and are now sitting inside the reality of having said them, learning what it feels like to be in the same space without the careful distance they had been maintaining. Her head found his shoulder somewhere around the third traffic light. He did not move. She fell half asleep before they reached Birchwood Avenue, and he did not wake her until the car stopped, and when she lifted her head, she looked at him with the soft, unguarded expression of someone caught between sleep and waking. The realist version of a person, when the managed surfaces haven't come back online yet. "Home," he said quietly. She blinked, looked out the window, looked back at him. "Yeah," she said. They went upstairs. The apartment was exactly as they had left it. His laptop still open on the kitchen table, her coffee mug from that morning still in the drying rack, the chore chart on the refrigerator with its current assignments, and Claire's specific handwriting in the column marked dishes. She stood in the kitchen in the emerald dress and the gold earrings and looked at all of it. "Nothing changed," she said. Not sad about it, just noticing. "Everything changed," Ryan said. She looked at him. "The apartment is the same," he said. "We're not." She considered that for a moment. Then, "Are you scared?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I'm scared that we get this right for 2 months, and then something goes sideways, and you have to find a new apartment, and I lose the person who makes this place feel like somewhere worth coming home to." She was quiet. "But I'm more scared of the alternative," he said, "which is doing another 9 months of saving each other the dumpling, and not saying why." She crossed the kitchen and stood in front of him and put her hand flat against his chest. Not a kiss, not an embrace, just that. Her hand against the front of his navy suit, feeling his heartbeat. "I'm going to mess this up sometimes," she said. "I work too much and I go quiet when I'm anxious and I have strong opinions about towels." "I know," he said. "And you?" She looked up at him. "You go inside yourself when things get heavy. I've watched you do it. You get quiet and you pull back and you act like nothing is happening, and I need you to not do that with me." "I know," he said again. "I know I do that. I did it with someone before you, and I lost her because I couldn't figure out how to stay present when staying present felt dangerous." He paused. "I don't want to do that again." "Then don't," she said simply. "That easy," he said. "No," she said. "Not easy at all, but possible. If you actually want it to be." He covered her hand with his, both of them, just standing there in the kitchen, in the quiet apartment, with the city outside, and Monday morning in the future, and tonight between them, like something they had been given and were now responsible for. "I want it to be," he said. She nodded. "Okay," she said. And then, because she was Claire, and she could not hold stillness for too long, without it becoming something she needed to puncture. "You should probably take the suit off. You've been wearing it for 6 hours, and you look like a man who walked into something much larger than he planned for." Ryan laughed, the genuine kind from the chest. "That's an accurate description," he said. "Also," she said, stepping back and looking at the refrigerator, "I'm going to make tea, and I'm going to tell you every single thing Margaret said to me this evening that I didn't tell you during the event, because I was processing it in real time, and you're going to sit there and listen without trying to solve it." "I can do that," he said. And then she continued pulling mugs from the cabinet, both of them without asking, because she already knew. "You're going to tell me what you were actually thinking when Nathan said you were a simple temporary choice. Because you went very quiet after that, and I saw your jaw do the thing." He raised an eyebrow. "My jaw does a thing." "Your jaw absolutely does a thing," she said. "I've been cataloging it for 9 months. Sit down, Ryan." He sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where they had written the rules on a legal pad on her second night in the apartment, and she made tea and brought him the mug without asking how he took it, because she had known for 6 months, and she sat across from him and they talked. Not about the gala, not about Prescott or Margaret or Monday morning. They talked about everything they had been carrying separately, the fears that lived behind the routines, the stories they told themselves about why things hadn't worked before, the specific and private ways that both of them had learned to protect themselves by going small when things felt too large. Ryan told her about the girlfriend before Claire, not the whole story, just the true part, that he had loved her, and he had not known how to say it, and he had expressed it instead through reliable presence and practical care, and hoped that was enough, and it had not been, and she had left. And he had decided the lesson was that he was better at showing up than at feeling. And that had been the wrong lesson. Claire told him about Nathan. Not all of it. Just the part that mattered, that she had been ambitious and certain and full of energy when they met. And that somewhere in the second year, she had started to doubt the ambition and question the certainty and manage the energy into something quieter and more acceptable. And that it had taken her 8 months after the relationship ended to understand that the doubting and the quieting had not been growth. They had been erosion. Ryan listened. He did not try to fix it. She listened to him. She did not try to minimize it. Around 1:15 a.m. The tea was cold, and they were both tired in the good way, not the exhausted and anxious way of a hard evening, but the settled way of a conversation that has reached something real. "You should sleep," Ryan said. "Monday is in 2 days." "Don't remind me," she said, but without the dread from before. The dread had become something more manageable, not gone but held in context. She stood up. He stood up. They were in the kitchen again, at the end of it this time, instead of the beginning. "Ryan," she said. "Yeah." "The promotion." She looked at him carefully. "If Margaret offers it, if Prescott confirms it, if all of it works out the way tonight suggested it might." She paused. "I need you to know that it's mine, and that this whatever we're doing doesn't change that. I'm not going to let it change that." "I know," he said. "I need to hear you say it back," she said. "Specifically." He looked at her steadily. "Your promotion is yours. Your conference is yours. Your career is yours. None of that belongs to me, and I don't want it to. I want to be the person who knows about it and is proud of it and hands you things when you need them without being asked. That is all I want." She exhaled. "Okay," she said. And the word carried an enormous amount of weight for 3 letters. She moved past him toward the hallway. At the kitchen doorway, she stopped, turned. "Ryan," she said one more time. "Yeah." The hallway light. She looked at him. "You've been leaving it on every night when I work late. For how long?" "Since October of last year," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "That's almost a year," she said. 11 months, he said. She looked at him with the expression he had been cataloging for 11 months, in return the one behind the smirk, and the legal pad, and the 3-suitcase confidence, the one that was just Claire unmanaged. "Good night, Ryan," she said softly. "Good night, Claire," he said. She went to her room. He stood in the kitchen for a moment alone in the apartment that felt completely different from the one he had left 6 hours ago, and completely the same. Then he reached over and turned off the kitchen light, left the hallway light on, and went to bed knowing that Monday morning was coming, that Nathan Caldwell had not finished, that Margaret's decision was still unmade, and that William Prescott was somewhere in a car back to his hotel, with a question Nathan had planted and a counter-impression Claire had earned. The fight was not over. It had, in certain ways, only just started. But for the first time in 11 months, Ryan Parker did not feel like he was standing outside of something waiting to be let in. He was already inside it, and he was not going anywhere. Sunday did not feel like a day off. Ryan woke up at 7:15 without an alarm, which told him everything he needed to know about the state of his nervous system. He lay still for exactly 4 minutes, listening to the apartment. The particular quality of silence that meant Claire was still asleep. No footsteps, no cabinet sounds, no the kettle is already going energy that usually meant she had been up for an hour before he surfaced. He got up quietly. Made coffee. Put her mug on the counter next to the machine before his own was even finished brewing, because that was what he did, and he was done pretending it wasn't intentional. At 7:53, he heard her door. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, in his gray hoodie, the one she had been borrowing for 6 months, and he had stopped expecting back with her hair loose, and her eyes at the 3/4 open level that meant she had slept but not deeply, and she looked at the mug already waiting on the counter, and something in her expression did the small quiet thing it always did when she registered that he had thought of her before she asked. "You're up early," she said. "So are you," he said. She picked up the mug, held it with both hands, looked at him over the rim. "I kept running Monday morning in my head." "I know," he said. "I could hear you thinking from across the hall." She made a face that was almost a smile. "That's not possible." "You get up for water when you're anxious," he said. "You went to the kitchen twice between midnight and 3. I heard the floor." She stared at him. "You were awake." "On and off." "You didn't come out. You didn't knock," he said. "I figured if you wanted company, you'd knock." She was quiet for a moment, holding the mug. "I almost did," she said. "The second time." "Why didn't you?" She looked into her coffee. "Because I didn't want to need to," she said. "Which I know is exactly the thing I told you last night that I do. Go quiet when I'm anxious. I do it, and then I'm annoyed at myself for doing it, and then I do it more. Claire, he said. I know. Knock, he said. Next time, knock. She looked at him for a moment. Something moving through her face that she let him see, which was itself, something the decision to not manage it away. Okay, she said. They sat at the kitchen table for an hour and a half with their coffee, and then the breakfast he made because it gave his hands something to do, and they went through it together. The documentation she had on her laptop, the timestamps, the email chain from the tech vendor confirming the sync error and its resolution, the event log showing 0 system flags after 6 p.m. Ryan went through it with the eye of someone who builds systems and understands how they fail and how that failure is recorded. And he identified 3 places where the documentation was bulletproof, and 2 places where the language was ambiguous enough that someone motivated could twist it. Here, he said, pointing to the screen. This email. You wrote minor integration issue addressed. Change that in your notes to sync conflict between donor registration module and backup display system, identified at 4:15 p.m., resolved at 5:47 p.m. 0 impact on event execution. Specific. Time-stamped. Clinical. She looked at it. You think Margaret's going to read that closely? I think Prescott might, he said. And if Nathan has already framed this as a cover-up, you want every piece of language to be so precise that there's nothing to grab onto. She nodded, made the notes. The vendor email, he continued. Forwards that to Margaret tonight, before Monday. Don't wait until the meeting. You want her to have it before Nathan has another opportunity to talk to anyone. She looked at him. You've done this before. Done what? Thought 3 moves ahead. I design things, he said. You think about what breaks before you build it. She forwarded the email at 9:42 a.m. Margaret's read receipt came back at 9:51. They both looked at Claire's phone when the notification appeared. Neither of them said anything. But the read receipt meant Margaret had been up, had been thinking about it, and had seen the documentation before the weekend was over. Good, Ryan said. Maybe, Claire said. Good, he said again, firmly enough that she looked at him and briefly, privately, let herself believe it. The rest of Sunday was quiet, in the way that days are quiet when something large is coming, and both people know it and have agreed not to spend the whole day talking about it. Claire worked on her conference proposal at the kitchen table. Ryan worked on a client project at the other end of the same table, both of them in the comfortable parallel silence that had developed over 9 months of shared space and was now something different without the pretense wrapped around it. At 2 in the afternoon, she reached across the table without looking up from her screen and stole half his sandwich without asking. He let her. At 4, she made more coffee and brought him a cup without asking. He took it. At 6:30, he looked up and found her staring at her screen with the expression that meant she had read the same paragraph 4 times and was no longer processing it. Stop, he said. I'm fine. You've been on the same section of the proposal for 40 minutes. She looked up. How do you know? You sigh when you change sections, he said. You haven't sighed. She stared at him. I don't sigh when I change sections. Claire, you absolutely sigh when you change sections. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked mildly horrified. That's embarrassing. It's not embarrassing, it's just a thing you do. Like how you tap the counter 3 times before you pour coffee and you don't realize you're doing it. I do not? She stopped. Do I? Every time, he said. 3 taps, then pour. She looked at her hand like it had been operating independently. I had no idea. That's how I knew the coffee was ready before you offered it, he said. I could hear the taps from across the room. She sat back in her chair with the expression of someone recalibrating. You've been cataloging me. You've been cataloging me, he said. The jaw thing. The jaw thing is obvious, she said. You look like you're deciding whether to say something you know you shouldn't. That's exactly what I'm doing when it happens, he said. See, I know things too, she said. And there was warmth under it, the particular warmth of 2 people discovering they have been paying the same quality of attention in both directions. She closed her laptop. Let's eat something real, she said. Not takeout, something we cook. You cook once a week, he said. And the rule was, I clean when you cook. The rules are under renegotiation, she said. She was already standing up. What's in the fridge? They cooked together in the kitchen that had started everything moving around each other with the ease of people who know exactly how much space the other person needs. And the dinner was unremarkable in every way, except that it was the first meal they had made together since everything had changed, and that made it entirely remarkable. Over dinner, she said, "What happens if Monday doesn't go well?" Not a question. A statement. The kind that opens a door and waits to see who walks through. Define not well, he said. Margaret decides the fake boyfriend thing is a character issue. Prescott withdraws his interest. The conference goes to someone else. She looked at him steadily. What happens? You keep doing the work, he said. Same as you've been doing. And eventually someone sees it again. And the promotion. There will be another promotion, he said. Or another hotel. Or another version of the conference with another organization. Claire, you're 25. You built the donor framework that made tonight possible in 8 weeks. That doesn't disappear if Monday is hard. She was quiet. What I'm more concerned about, he said, is what happens if Monday goes well. She looked at him. What? If Margaret gives you the conference, if Prescott confirms, if everything lines up. He held her gaze. You're going to be working 90-hour weeks until March. Your phone is going to be a permanent extension of your hand. You're going to come home and not be here even when you're sitting on the couch because you'll be in the thing. Ryan, I'm not saying that's a problem, he said. I'm saying I need you to know that I know it's coming, and I'm not going to take it personally, and I'm not going to become Nathan about it. She went very still. I'm not going to start making quiet observations about whether your ambition is sustainable, he said. I'm not going to make you feel like you have to manage me along with everything else. But I also need you to hear me when I say that I'm going to check in, not to monitor, just to see how you are, and I need you to actually answer. She was quiet for a long moment. I used to ask how I was doing, she said quietly, in a way that was really asking whether I was becoming too much. I could hear it underneath the question. I know, Ryan said. That's not what I'm asking. When I ask how you are, I want to know how you are. Not whether you're calibrating correctly. Not whether you're taking up the right amount of space. He paused. You can always take up more space than you think you're allowed to. With me. She looked at him for a long time. Okay, she said finally. And then softer, same goes. I know, he said. Does it, she said. Because you also do the thing where you say you're fine, and then you get very efficient and very quiet, and you produce a lot of excellent work and no actual feelings for about a week. He opened his mouth. I've watched you do it twice, she said. Once in February, when the client project fell apart, and once in May, when you got the bad news about your cousin. She looked at him directly. You went into solving mode, and you didn't come out for 6 days. He closed his mouth. I would have sat with you, she said. If you'd let me, I would have just sat there and not tried to fix anything. He absorbed that. I'm working on it, he said. I know, she said. I'm not criticizing. I'm telling you what I see, so you know I see it. He nodded. They finished dinner. They washed dishes in the established rhythm she handed he placed, and the domestic ordinary of it was its own kind of answer to every complicated thing the evening had contained. At 10:15 p.m. her phone rang. They both looked at it at the same time. The caller ID said Margaret Sloan. Claire picked it up before the second ring. Answered it at the counter, one hand braced against the edge, very still. Ryan did not move. Did not pretend to do anything else. Just stood where he was and let her have the call and waited. Yes, she said. A pause. I did. I wanted you to have it before Monday. Another pause longer. Her face was unreadable in the way faces are unreadable when someone is working very hard to listen and not react simultaneously. I see. A pause. Yes, I understand. Then very quietly. Thank you, Margaret. She ended the call. She stood at the counter for a moment with her back to him. Claire, he said. She turned around. Her expression was complicated in a way he had not seen before. Multiple things occupying the same space, none of them quite dominant. "Prescott called Margaret this afternoon," she said, "before she even saw my email." She paused. "He called to tell her that his conversation on the balcony with Nathan had felt engineered, that Nathan had been too specific, too prepared, and that in his experience, people who destroy others with surgical precision are usually doing it for personal reasons and not professional ones." Ryan stared at her. He told Margaret that a woman who admits a mistake publicly in front of a room full of people who matter to her career is either reckless or honest, and that nothing he had seen of me suggested reckless. The kitchen was very quiet. "He's not withdrawing his interest," she said. He confirmed it. He told Margaret the conference proposal is the deciding factor, and he wants it on his desk the same day as hers. Ryan exhaled. Something released in his chest that had been held since the balcony, since Margaret's face, since Nathan in the lobby. "Claire," he said. "I know," she said. Her voice was not triumphant. It was something steadier and more real than triumph, the voice of a person who has just had something confirmed that they needed to believe was true about themselves. "You did that," he said. "Prescott did that," she said. "Prescott responded to what you did," he said. "There's a difference." She came across the kitchen and sat on the counter, her preferred thinking position, the one she used when things were too large to process standing straight, and looked at him. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Okay." When Margaret called, my first thought, the very first thing before I even heard what she said. She stopped. "My first thought was that I wanted to tell you. Whatever it was, good or bad, I wanted to tell you first." The kitchen held that for a moment. "That scared me a little," she said. "Why?" he said. "Because that used to be how it felt with Nathan," she said. Wanting to tell him everything, and then slowly realizing that I was editing what I told him, because some things I reported made him go quiet in a particular way that meant he was cataloging it for later. Ryan looked at her carefully. "Wanting to tell me things is not the same thing as what you had with Nathan," he said. "The difference is, what happens after you tell me?" "What happens after I tell you?" she said, genuinely asking. "I say okay," he said. "And then I ask if you want me to do something about it or just hear it. And then I do whichever one you said." She blinked. "That's it," she said. "That's it," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "Nathan used to say he was just being honest," she said. "When he'd make an observation that landed wrong, he'd say, 'I'm only telling you this because I care.'" "I know the version," Ryan said. "Did you do that with someone before?" He considered it honestly. "No," he said. "I did the opposite. I cared, and I didn't say anything, and she felt alone in the relationship because I was present physically and absent emotionally, and she told me so 4 times before she left, and I heard it, but I didn't change it because I didn't know how." He paused. "I'm trying to learn how." She looked at him with the careful, open expression that she reserved for moments when she had decided to believe something. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. At 11:30 p.m. she went to bed. He stayed up another hour finishing a client revision, and when he finally shut his laptop and stood in the dark kitchen, he looked at the counter where she had sat, and the chore chart on the refrigerator, and the 2 mugs in the drying rack. Then he went to the hallway, left the light on. Monday morning arrived the way important mornings do, ordinary in all its textures, extraordinary only in weight. Ryan woke at 6:30, made coffee, heard Claire up at 6:45, moving through her routine with a particular deliberateness that meant she was in the controlled, focused state she got into before something high stakes. She came into the kitchen at 7:10, dressed in the navy blazer and gray slacks he associated with her professional armor, not because the clothes were special, but because she wore them when she needed to feel like the most competent version of herself. "How do I look?" she said. He looked at her, not the way he had looked at her in the emerald dress 2 days ago, in this same kitchen that had been involuntary, undefended, the look of a man who had stopped pretending. This was something different. This was the look of someone who knew exactly what he was seeing. "Like someone who has already won the argument," he said. "She just hasn't had it yet." Claire held his gaze for a moment. Good, she said. That's what I'm going for. She picked up her bag, picked up her coffee, paused at the kitchen doorway. Ryan, she said. Yeah. Thank you. For Saturday. For yesterday. For... She gestured at the apartment, at the coffee, at all of it. For the whole thing. Don't thank me, he said. Just come home and tell me how it went. She looked at him for one more second. Then she left. He heard the door, heard the elevator, heard the building settle back into its morning quiet, and he sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop and worked, because that was what he could do, and he was good at it, and working was how he kept himself from doing the other thing, the pulling back, the going quiet, the disappearing into efficiency instead of staying present in the waiting. He stayed present. At 9:02 a.m. his phone buzzed. A text from Claire. 3 words. Meeting just started. He wrote back, I'm here. At 9:47 a.m. nothing. At 10:15 a.m. nothing. At 10:34 a.m. his phone rang. Not a text. A call. He picked it up on the first ring. Hey, he said. Silence for 1 second. Then, she gave me the conference. The words arrived simple and complete. He closed his eyes. Ryan, she said. And her voice was the unmanaged version, the one from Saturday night on the balcony, the one without the professional surface. She gave me the conference, and she offered the promotion, and Prescott was on the phone for the last 20 minutes, and he wants a full presentation of the donor strategy in January. Claire, he said. It's mine, she said. Not triumphant. Something larger than triumph. Something that had been earned over a very long time and had just arrived with the full weight of what it cost to get there. It's actually mine. I know, he said. I knew it on Saturday. She laughed, the surprised one, the real one. You didn't know anything on Saturday, she said. You were standing in a kitchen in a navy suit, not knowing what you were walking into. I knew you had built something real, he said. The rest was just logistics. A pause. Ryan, she said. Yeah. I want to tell you something, a confession. Okay, he said. The zipper on Saturday, she said. It wasn't really stuck. He went very still. I mean, it was a little stuck, she said quickly. It was genuinely a little stuck. But I had been standing in the kitchen in that dress for 4 minutes before I walked out to find you, and I had already decided to ask your opinion. And I had already decided that if you looked at me the way I thought you might look at me, I was going to ask the zipper question. Because I needed a reason to get close enough to see if what I thought was there was actually there. The kitchen was completely quiet around him. And, he said, his voice barely above the silence. And you looked, she said. You looked at me the exact way I thought you might. And your face did the thing. And I knew. A pause. I knew before the zipper. I just needed you to know too. He sat with that for a long moment. 11 months of parallel attention. 2 people watching each other with precision and saying nothing. And Claire in an emerald dress in a kitchen on a Saturday afternoon, engineering the smallest possible collision to close the distance. You are, he said carefully, the most calculated person I have ever lived with. She laughed. Is that a complaint? Absolutely not, he said. Good, she said. Come meet me for lunch. I want to tell you everything that happened in that meeting, and you said you'd listen without trying to solve it. I'll listen, he said. And Ryan? Her voice shifted. Something quieter and more deliberate underneath the brightness. Bring your laptop. I want to show you the full proposal. Not because I need you to fix anything, because you're the first person I want to show. He was already standing. I'll be there in 40 minutes, he said. The place on Weston Street, she said. The small one, not the Gala, not the Halston. Somewhere that's just ours. 40 minutes, he said. He hung up. He stood in the kitchen for exactly 10 seconds. Then he grabbed his jacket, his laptop, his keys, and walked out of apartment 4C into the hallway where the light was still on from the night before, and toward the elevator, and the street, and the city, and lunch at a small restaurant on Weston Street, with the woman who had engineered a zipper and changed everything, and he was not pretending about a single part of what he felt. He was present. Completely without reservation present. And that, for Ryan Parker, was the most important thing he had ever learned to do. The lunch at Weston Street lasted 2 hours and 40 minutes. Ryan had said he would listen without solving, and he did mostly. He broke it once when Claire described the moment Margaret had slid the promotion offer across the desk in writing, and Claire had not immediately picked it up, had just looked at it, and Ryan said, "Why didn't you pick it up?" with enough urgency that she stopped mid-sentence and looked at him. "I wanted to make sure my hands weren't shaking when I did," she said. He went quiet. "Were they?" he asked. "A little," she said. "But by the time I picked it up, they weren't." He looked at her across the small table at the small restaurant on Weston Street, and he did not say anything for a moment, because there was nothing to add to that. She had held herself steady in the moment that mattered. She had done it in the room without him. That was the whole story. "Tell me the rest," he said. She told him the rest. Prescott had joined the meeting by phone at 9:20. His opening sentence had been, "Miss Bennett, I want to be direct with you. I've had people attempt to influence my assessments before. It rarely works, and it never works the way they intend." He had paused. "What Nathan Caldwell did on Saturday evening told me considerably more about Nathan Caldwell than it did about you." Claire had said, "I appreciate that, Mr. Prescott, though I want to be clear that the mistake I made was real, regardless of his motivation for exposing it." And Prescott had been quiet for a moment, and then said, "That is exactly the right thing to say." Ryan listened to all of it. He did not interrupt again. He sat with his coffee going cold and his food half finished, and he listened to every detail, the exact wording of the promotion, offer the specific language Prescott used about the January presentation. The moment when Margaret had said almost as an aside that the donor segmentation structure Claire had built in August was going to become the hotel's standard framework going forward. That last one made Claire pause when she said it, like she hadn't fully processed it in the meeting and was processing it now out loud in real time, watching his face to see if it landed the way it felt like it should land. "That's your work becoming infrastructure," Ryan said. She looked at him. "That's the framework you built in 8 weeks becoming the system the whole organization uses," he said. "That's not a compliment. That's a legacy." She blinked rapidly. Once, twice. "Don't," she said. "I'm not doing anything," he said. "You're doing the thing where you say something true, and I have to work very hard not to cry in public," she said. "I have a professional reputation to maintain." "You're in a restaurant on Weston Street," he said. "Your professional reputation is not currently at risk." She pressed her lips together, looked at the ceiling briefly, looked back. "Okay," she said. "I am mildly emotional about the infrastructure comment." "Noted," he said. "Eat your lunch." She ate her lunch. On the walk back to Birchwood Avenue, she reached for his hand without thinking about it. Just the easy, unconsidered reach of someone for whom the action had already become natural, which told Ryan something important about the distance they had traveled in 72 hours. He held on. "What happens now?" she said. Not anxious, just orienting. "You write the best conference proposal anyone at the Halston Grand has ever submitted," he said. "I finish the Henderson contract by Friday. We figure out the rest as it comes." "The rest," she repeated, testing the word. "Us," he said. "The apartment, the lease, what we tell people. Whether David Cho gets to say he knew before we did." She laughed. "He absolutely knew before we did." "I know," Ryan said. "He told me on Saturday. He said whatever I was doing was working, and I should keep doing it." "What were you doing?" she said. "Getting out of your way," he said. She squeezed his hand. "That's not all you were doing." "No," he said. "But it was the most important part." The weeks that followed had a rhythm that was different from everything before Saturday, and continuous with everything that had always been true about them. Claire worked. Ryan worked. The apartment remained exactly what it had always been, slightly cluttered, comfortable, divided by a chore chart that had not been updated since the promotion, because neither of them had gotten around to it, and neither of them particularly minded. But the distance was gone. The careful management of proximity. The deliberate not noticing. All of it simply absent like furniture that had been quietly moved out one night and the room had adjusted naturally to the extra space. She knocked on his door on the third Wednesday when she came home late, and the anxiety was running too high to sleep. He opened it before she finished the second knock. He had heard her key in the door and the specific quality of her footsteps that meant the day had been too much. "Come in," he said. She sat on the floor against his bed, with her knees pulled up, and told him about the sponsor meeting that had gone sideways and the revised timeline Margaret had handed her at 4 p.m., and the moment she had almost called Nathan, not because she wanted to talk to him, but because he was the person she had called about work problems for 2 years, and the habit was still in her fingers when she was overwhelmed. "But I didn't," she said. "I called you instead. You didn't pick up." "I was in a client call," he said. "I saw it, and I ended the call early and called you back, and you didn't pick up." She looked at him. "I didn't see you called back." "I know," he said. "I figured you were okay when I didn't hear from you again." "I was okay," she said. "I had talked myself down by then." A pause. "But I needed to tell you I had almost called him. I didn't want to not tell you." He looked at her. "I appreciate that." "Does it bother you?" she said. "The habit," he said. "No, you didn't call him. You called me. And then when I wasn't available, you handled it yourself." He paused. "That's 3 things that have nothing to do with him and everything to do with you." She sat with that. "You're very good at this," she said. "I'm learning," he said. "You're a good teacher." "I'm a terrible teacher," she said. "I'm impatient, and I assume people know things they don't know." "You're an excellent teacher," he said. "You just don't know what you're teaching." She looked at him for a long moment. "What am I teaching you?" she said. "How to stay," he said simply. The twist came in November, 3 weeks before the proposal deadline, and it came from a direction neither of them had anticipated. Ryan got the call on a Thursday afternoon. A design agency in San Francisco one he had cold-pitched 14 months ago and written off came back with an offer. Not a contract. An offer. A full-time senior designer position, remote optional, but with a strong preference for on-site at least 3 months of the year. The salary was significant. The projects were the kind he had been building toward for 4 years. He sat with the phone in his hand for a long time after the call ended. He did not tell Claire that night. He told himself it was because she was deep in proposal revisions, and he didn't want to interrupt her momentum. He told himself he needed to think it through first. He told himself there was no rush because the decision deadline was 2 weeks away. All of those things were partially true. The fully true thing, which he sat with alone for 26 hours before he could face it, was this: the offer terrified him because it was everything he had wanted before Saturday, and he did not know anymore whether what he had wanted before Saturday was still what he wanted now, and he was afraid that saying so out loud to her of all people would sound like he was making her responsible for his choices, and he had promised himself he would never do to her what Nathan had done. He told her on Friday evening. She had just closed her laptop on what she said was a solid draft of the first 3 sections, and she was in the good tired place, sitting cross-legged on the couch with her socks off, and he sat across from her and told her about the call. She listened all the way through without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "When did they call?" "Thursday afternoon," he said. She looked at him. "Ryan," she said. "I know," he said. "That was yesterday," she said. "I know. You sat on it for 26 hours. I know." She uncrossed her legs, put both feet on the floor. The shift in posture was significant. She was moving into the direct conversation position, the one where she was going to say something that needed to be said clearly. "Is this the thing?" she said. "The going quiet, the efficient and no feelings." He exhaled. "Yeah," he said. "It is." "Okay," she said. "Thank you for recognizing it." She paused. "Now tell me why you really sat on it." He looked at her. "Because I was afraid," he said, "that if I told you about an opportunity that takes me to San Francisco for 3 months at a time, you would hear me saying, 'I'm choosing it.' And I didn't know how to tell you about it without it sounding like a choice I was already making." She was very still. "Are you?" she said. "Choosing it?" "I don't know," he said. "And I need you to tell me that my not knowing is allowed to just be my not knowing. Not a statement about us. Not a referendum on what Saturday meant. Just I don't know, and I need to think through it, and I needed to tell you that without it becoming something it isn't." She looked at him for a long moment. "Okay," she said. "Your not knowing is allowed to be your not knowing." "That's it," he said. "That's it," she said. "You told me. I heard you. Now you think about it." She paused. "But Ryan, I need you to think about it for real. Not think about what it means for the apartment or the lease or whatever is happening between us. Think about what you actually want." "What if what I want is complicated?" he said. "Then it's complicated," she said. "Welcome to being a person. Everything worth having is complicated." He looked at her. "You're not going to tell me what to do." "Absolutely not," she said. "You're not going to tell me what you want me to do," he said. She paused, a longer pause than the previous one. "I want you to take the thing that is best for Ryan Parker," she said carefully. "Not best for our living situation or our relationship or my comfort. Best for you. Because if you stay here and don't take it because of me, you will eventually look at me the way people look at the thing they sacrificed for, and I cannot be that. I won't be that. And if I take it," he said. "Then we figure out what 3 months looks like," she said. "People figure out harder things than geography every day." He looked at her for a long time. "How are you this rational about this?" he said. "I'm not," she said. "I have been sitting here for the last 4 minutes wanting to tell you to turn it down and stay, and I have not said that because it would be wrong. But I want you to know it was a very effortful 4 minutes." He crossed the space between them and sat beside her on the couch, and she leaned against him, and neither of them said anything for a while. He turned the offer down on Monday, not for her. He needed her to know that, needed her to understand the distinction, the way he had spent the weekend working out the distinction for himself. He turned it down because when he sat with the full weight of it, what he wanted was not the agency in San Francisco. What he wanted was to build his own thing. The offer had clarified that. Sometimes the right opportunity is the one that shows you what you were actually after by being almost but not quite it. He told the agency thank you. He told them he hoped their paths would cross in the future. He hung up and sat for a moment and felt surprisingly completely clear. He told Claire at dinner. She looked at him across the table. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," he said. It's not because of you," he said. "It's because of me. I want to build something, my own studio. The agency would have been someone else's architecture. I don't want someone else's architecture." She was quiet. "You knew that before the call," she said. "I knew it about 3 hours into sitting with the call," he said. "But I needed the offer to make me admit it." She nodded slowly. "Okay." "Okay," he said. "I believe you," she said. Simply, completely. "I believe you." And that the uncomplicated, unqualified belief was something he had not known he needed to hear until she said it. The months between November and March had a momentum to them. Claire's proposal went to Margaret on November 15th, 6 hours ahead of deadline, and to Prescott the same day. The response came back in 4 days, approved, fully funded, move forward. The conference machinery started turning, donor confirmations, venue, logistics. The regional coordinator network Claire had designed from scratch, and Ryan watched her run it the way he had watched her at the gala, with the difference that now he was not watching from the position of a man pretending not to see clearly. He was watching as the person she came home to. He started the design studio in January. 3 clients in the first month, 2 of them referrals from the Henderson contract. 1 a cold pitch that landed because he had finally stopped underselling the work and started pricing it as what it was worth. Claire read his client proposals the way he read her event documents, not to fix, but to see. They argued in February. A real one, not a kitchen table disagreement, but the kind that happens when 2 people are both under pressure, and they stop giving each other the margin they've been trained to give, and the words come out sharper than intended. It started over scheduling. She had committed his Saturday to a conference vendor meeting without asking because she had assumed without checking, and he said so directly, and she said he was being rigid, and he said she was doing the thing where she managed people without consulting them, and the air in the apartment went cold in a way it had not gone cold before. She went to her room. He sat in the kitchen, 40 minutes. He counted them, not because he was watching the clock, but because he was working through what he actually needed to say, and not the defensive version of it. He knocked on her door. "Come in," she said. Her voice was the flat one, which meant she was also working through it. He sat on the floor. She was on her bed. He looked at the middle distance between them. "I should have said it differently," he said. "I was right about the thing, but I said it in a way that was about being right instead of being heard. And I knew the difference in the moment, and I said it the wrong way anyway." She was quiet. "And the rigid comment," she started, "was accurate," he said. "I got rigid when I felt unheard. That's a pattern. I'm naming it." She exhaled. "I managed you," she said. "I made a decision about your time without asking because I was running the whole conference in my head, and I stopped thinking of you as separate from the logistics." She paused. "That's the thing I do. I absorb people into the plan." "I know," he said. "I don't want to do that with you," she said. "Then ask," he said. "And I'll try not to be rigid when the answer is actually no big deal." "Was it a big deal the Saturday?" "No," he said. "The meeting is fine. I was bothered about not being asked." "I'll ask," she said. "I'll tell you when things bother me before they become rigid," he said. She moved to the floor, sat across from him. The small distance between them felt different from the distance of an hour ago, smaller, managed, already closing. "We did that pretty well," she said. "Yeah," he said. "I read somewhere that couples who can argue and repair quickly are more stable than couples who don't argue," she said. "Where did you read that?" "I don't remember, but I'm choosing to believe it applies here." "It applies here," he said. She leaned forward and kissed him briefly. Not romantic exactly. More like punctuation. The period at the end of the argument that says "close done, we're still here." They went back to the kitchen. March arrived. The National Charity Conference at the Halston Grand ran for 3 days. Ryan went on the first evening not as a date, not as support, but because David Cho had sent him a text that said, "You should see this." And he had taken a car to the hotel and stood at the back of the main ballroom and watched Claire Bennett command a room of 300 people with the total settled authority of someone standing inside something she had built from nothing. Prescott was in the front row. Margaret was on the stage one step to the left of where the event was running, which meant she was watching Claire and not the program. David appeared beside Ryan at the back wall. "Well," David said quietly. "Yeah," Ryan said. They stood in companionable silence for a moment. "She's been different this year," David said. "Since October. I don't know exactly what happened in October." "I do," Ryan said. David looked at him. "She stopped apologizing for being exactly what she is," Ryan said. David was quiet for a moment. Then, "And what does that have to do with you?" "Nothing," Ryan said. "And everything. In the right proportions." David seemed to consider this. "That's a very careful answer." "It's an accurate one," Ryan said. On the third and final day of the conference, when the last session ended, and the attendees were moving through the reception, and Claire was doing the things she did at the end of high-stakes events. The quiet debrief walk, checking every space, making sure every detail had resolved. Ryan waited near the lobby without texting, without calling, without signaling in any way. He just waited. She came out of the main ballroom at 6:47 p.m. with her tablet under her arm and her earpiece out and her heels off, because she had been on her feet for 11 hours, and she saw him standing in the lobby and stopped walking. "You came," she said. "David texted me," he said. "He wasn't supposed to do that." "I know," Ryan said. "I'm glad he did." She walked toward him. She looked exhausted in the specific way of someone who has just finished something enormous and is now encountering the full weight of what it cost to build it. "How was it?" he said. "Perfect," she said. "Not bragging, just stating. It was exactly what I designed it to be." He looked at her. "Then you should take a moment to feel that," he said. "Right now. Before the debrief and the follow-up emails and whatever Margaret needs on Monday. Right now." She looked at him. And then slowly, she let herself feel it. He could see it happen, the conscious act of letting something land, instead of moving immediately past it to the next task. Her eyes went bright. Not tears. Something more than that. "It's mine," she said quietly. "It actually happened." "It happened," he said. "You built it, and it happened." She reached for his hand. They stood in the lobby of the Halston Grand together, and she held on. 6 months after the conference on a Friday evening in September, Ryan came home to apartment 4C to find the hallway light already on. She had left it on for him. He stood in the hallway for a moment when he understood that because he had been leaving it on for her for almost 2 years, and this was the first time she had reversed it, and it was such a small thing, and it was not a small thing at all. He went into the kitchen. She was standing barefoot at the counter, and she was wearing the emerald green dress. He stopped. She turned, and she had the smirk, the original one, the first Saturday smirk, and she said, "Be honest. How does it look?" He looked at her. Not the involuntary stare of a man ambushed by something he wasn't ready to see. The clear, deliberate look of a man who knows exactly what he is looking at and has chosen it completely. He walked across the kitchen. He took her hand. "It looks," he said, "like the dress you wore the night I finally stopped hiding from the woman I loved." Her smirk softened. Something underneath it came forward, the real version, the unmanaged version. The Claire that lived behind every practiced expression and had been standing in front of him since September of last year, waiting for him to see her clearly. "The zipper wasn't stuck," she said. "I know," he said. "I've known for a while." She blinked. "Since when?" "Since the Monday after the gala," he said. "You were working on the proposal, and you went to hang your coat, and the zipper on your work jacket caught on the lining, and you fixed it yourself in about 4 seconds. He paused. "The emerald dress zipper was not a 4-second problem. You had been standing in that kitchen waiting." She stared at him. "You knew," she said. "This whole time you knew." "This whole time," he said. "And you didn't say anything." "You didn't say anything," he said. "I figured we were even." She laughed, the real one, the surprised one that got away before she could catch it. The one he had been cataloging since the beginning, and would catalog until the end of everything. "I hate you," she said. "You saved me the dumpling," he said. "Try again." She looked at him. He looked at her. And in the kitchen, where everything had started, the same counter, the same chore chart, the same 2 mugs in the drying rack. Claire Bennett rose on her toes and kissed Ryan Parker, and he kissed her back the way he had learned to do everything that mattered without holding back, without pretending, without waiting for it to be safe. Because some things are only worth having if you are willing to risk them entirely. And love, real love, the kind built from saved dumplings and hallway lights and difficult conversations, and the courage to say the true thing, when the easier thing is also available, does not arrive in grand gestures. It arrives in a kitchen on a Saturday afternoon, in an emerald green dress, with a zipper that was never really stuck. And it stays because 2 people decide every single day that staying is worth more than the safety of standing still.